Hi, my name's Phil. I like talking about politics, and in this video, I'd like to discuss a Tory leadership poll which has some surprising results because it suggests that Conservative Party members, in contrast to previous suggestions, actually favour James Cleverly and Priti Patel over the more obvious hopefuls like Kemi Badenoch and Robert Jenrick. But how reliable is the poll likely to be? Will it ultimately matter? And why might this be the case anyway? So in terms of the reliability of the poll, which is obviously incredibly important, it's been noted that the Pollster Technic UK did actually produce the most reliable Conservative leadership poll in 2022, the last time this happened. It is particularly difficult to poll party members compared to like a national population, which, you know, the population is smaller. So it's more difficult to know what a representative sample should look like than, for example, the national population. But as this is the same pollster who produced the best results last time, it should be treated seriously. So what do the results show? Well, first of all, and a bit of a surprise, it shows that James Cleverly is the most popular of the 6 contenders, with 26% naming him as first choice. But also he wins out in head-to-heads against each of the individual contestants. Now, doesn't prove he'd be the most likely to win the contest if he's on the final ballot. And apart from anything else, you know, would he be on the final ballot? Because it's up to Tory MPs to whittle down that choice to the 2 who get put in front of members in the first place. But a poll like this could absolutely get Tory MPs thinking. In fact, arguably it should do. For example, so imagine you're a moderate Conservative MP who, despite what you feel you may have to say publicly, you want your party to stop chasing the white whale of culture wars and other pointless performative politics. So you don't really want one of the rabid far-right candidates to win. Now, up until now, what do you do about this? The conventional wisdom is that Tom Tugendhat is the strongest of these so-called moderate Conservatives. Not that he's all that moderate, mind you, being one of those throwing his weight behind the idea of dropping human rights laws. But as a relative term, he is seen as the strongest of what you might call the centre-right, one nation candidates. But you wouldn't think that party members will choose him over someone like Badenoch or Jenrick. So backing Tugendhat leads you to a likely trajectory of going, OK, well, back Tugendhat, he gets on the ballot. And let's say it's him against Robert Jenrick on the final ballot. You're just then waiting for the party members to pick Jenrick because they have a habit of choosing the most extreme option, right? So that strategy is futile. It doesn't matter you can get Tugendhat on the ballot. If ultimately party members will choose the other option, doesn't make any sense. Which leaves you, if you really do want to get a leader who's probably not going to go gung-ho for the culture wars, 2 realistic options. The first is that you and your other non-crazy colleagues try to work out a way of getting 2 relatively sane contestants onto the final ballot. And you know, 2 that, you know, neither would be a complete disaster, and hope you've got the numbers to arrange it. But given that this is, you know, the numbers on the far right in the Conservative Party are in the same proportion as before the election, that would require a lot of MPs to be in on what is effectively a conspiracy. Probably not a great chance of success. The second option is to try and identify the far right candidate who is least appealing to the members, and then get, if as long as you're sure that, you know, your pick, let's say Tom Tugendhat, is going to definitely get onto that final ballot, then have a few additional ones, hive off and back the least popular of the far right candidates to try and get them onto the ballot. That could allow them to leapfrog the more crowd-pleasing lunatic. But if you see a poll like this, you might actually start to think, well, hang on a minute, because both of those strategies are risky. They're certainly not guaranteed to succeed or even necessarily likely to succeed. But James Cleverly, now if James Cleverly could be a better bet than Tugendhat for winning the contest, so you can see why Cleverly commissioned the poll. He could use a result like this to say to his fellow Conservative MPs, look, I'm already considered the best choice amongst over a quarter of members, and Tommy's only backed by 11%. I'm your best bet of avoiding a raging nutter like Kemi or Robert mangling our party's reputation for another few years. In fact, as I say, the poll goes a bit further. It doesn't just say that James Cleverly has the most supporters first choice, with 26% of members saying so, because it asked the sample of party members who they would prefer in a series of head-to-heads. And Cleverly came out on top in all of them. In other words, if this poll is accurate, it's a big if, but it has the credentials based on the previous contest to be considered reasonable, then if you're the sort of Tory who desperately wants to avoid Badenoch or Jenrick taking over, then you would be thinking that Cleverly will be worth considering. You've got a poll here that says, actually, you know, Cleverly and Jenrick could end up on the final ballot and Cleverly would still win. Cleverly and Badenoch could still end up on the final ballot and Cleverly would still win. So Tory MPs may now have to think very carefully. The way the contest runs is that when Parliament returns in a couple of weeks, Conservative MPs will begin the process of dropping 2 of the 6 candidates out of the contest. The 4 remaining are then expected to present their ideas to members at the conference, at the party conference. After that, the field will then be whittled down to 2, and then the ballot goes out for party members to choose the leader, with the winner being announced at the beginning of November. So moderate Tories are going to have to think about strategy here. How much confidence do they have in the poll? If they take the poll as reasonably accurate, certainly as accurate as anything else they've got, is there anything that's likely to change minds? Now, part of that thinking will have to involve asking why party members may think Cleverly and Patel are preferable to others. Now, Tory MPs have got an advantage over me here because they could go around party members in their own constituency, maybe some others, and actually ask them, what is this about? What appeals? It hasn't been explored in the poll. I mean, that makes sense. So it's guesswork on my part. But it occurs to me there are 2 common factors. If you think about why would Patel and Cleverly be particularly favoured by the party membership, the first is that they are both former Home Secretaries. I strongly suspect this has got nothing to do with it. The second, however, is they were both in Boris Johnson's cabinet. Now, James Cleverly wasn't there for a ridiculously long period of time. And he initially was only there as a minister without portfolio anyway. He wasn't in charge of a government department. But the fact that he was not only in cabinet, but also occupying senior roles under both Truss and Sunak as well, may help him be seen as a sort of unifying figure. You know, maybe the thinking is if he could serve in cabinet under 3 different leaders, he might appeal as someone who has broad appeal, because there were 3 very different leaders. But that is me guessing. The suggestion that Cleverly would be considered more appealing to party members than the other candidates, and that he would beat the others in a head-to-head, that is surprising to me. It is certainly at odds with what we've been led to believe up until now, although, of course, we are aware that what we're led to believe is often being reported by people in the media who may have a particular agenda to go with and not much information to go on. And although the poll was commissioned by Cleverly's campaign, you may think, oh, a bit dodgy. It doesn't necessarily mean there is anything dodgy about the results. They will have commissioned it because they expected these results and wanted to make them public. On the flip side, the article that's talking about these poll results talks about other polls and mentions that Tom Tugendhat is the most popular with the public. So the way it's billing it is James Cleverly most popular with party members, Tom Tugendhat with the public. Tugendhat will presumably push that message to his colleagues. Oh, well, it's all right, winning the contest, but you need to appeal to the public if you want to win the next election. But what I would say is if any Conservatives, particularly moderate Conservatives, have got any understanding of polling, and that's an even bigger if than the reliability of the party member poll, then they're not going to be swayed by the argument for 2 reasons. The first, doesn't really matter who's more popular with the public. What matters right now is who's more popular with the members. If the members do not like Tugendhat, then they're not going to vote for him. So it makes no difference. The members are very unlikely to be thinking in terms of who's more likely to win an election. They're thinking whose policies most chimes with their own beliefs. Second, it's all a nonsense anyway. As I've said in previous videos, these public approval ratings of the leadership contestants are all worthless with the exception of Priti Patel. And that is because the way these favourability ratings are worked out, and they're all negative, is it's the percentage of people who have a favourable view of them subtracts the percentage of people who have an unfavourable view of them, and you just work out a favourability rating. But there's a load of don't knows in there. And for 5 of the 6 contestants, the don't knows are like over half. There's a massive number of don't knows. At that point, the rating means nothing. However, the number of don't knows is actually quite small for Priti Patel. So alone, of all the contestants, she is the only one who has a favourability rating that means anything, and it's very, very negative. She's deeply unpopular with the public. And because the number of don't knows is very small, there's not really much of the public giving her the benefit of the doubt, right? So she's not going to correct that unpopularity as leader of the opposition. In fact, the party poll showing Patel in second place amongst members indicates how little party members are prioritising public attitudes in their assessment of the leadership candidates. It sort of backs up my first point, really. If party members were even remotely interested in electing a leader who could appeal to the public, they would not even be considering Priti Patel. So any Tory MP factoring these public favourability ratings into their thinking, not really thinking at all, I would say. Finally, as a little thought experiment, I did try and consider what I might do. You know, if I were a moderate Tory MP and I wanted the party to focus on real policies and engaging with the public, not pursuing failed and divisive culture wars, what would I do? Well, first of all, I think I would take this poll seriously. I've never seen any evidence that Tom Tugendhat could beat either Jenrick or Badenoch in a head-to-head with party members. Of course, absence of evidence is not evidence of absence, but still, there is no evidence of that. But there is now evidence that Cleverly could, even though we have to be careful to note party member polling is especially tricky. But there is some solid evidence in favour of Cleverly at least having a better chance against those far-right candidates than Tugendhat. However, I wouldn't think Cleverly will make a good leader. I also don't think he'd be a strong leader. In other words, Cleverly would almost certainly be doomed to failure as Conservative Party leader. So if you somehow manage to manoeuvre him into the leadership, all you arguably do is delay the far right taking over anyway. So there'll be this period where he's leader, he makes a right arse of it, he's deposed, and then the far right say, look, we've been telling you for years, you need to do this. They tried doing this, it all failed, you need to do this. So there might be an argument, it's probably just better to let the nutters take charge for now. Let them burn themselves out. If you accept that the party's probably going nowhere until they've burned themselves out, let that happen, begin the serious rebuilding project once they've done it. So I think I might be tempted to accept that the party is basically buggered for the next few years, no matter who takes over. And if the next leader is going to fail anyway, it may as well be one of the extremists. But if I did want to try and get the best credible option to win, let's say I refused to take that sort of defeatist attitude and I thought, no, we're going to try and win the next election, I think I'd probably be thinking Cleverly more than Tugendhat at this point. I would certainly be making sure Cleverly was still around for the party conference phase of the contest. The last thing I would want is for Cleverly to be one of the two that gets dropped out next month. I would at least want him to go to the conference, then very carefully judge how the party faithful responds to him. But still, it is surprising to me that Cleverly, who, let's face it, he has no history of successfully delivering anything in government, good or bad. I mean, I don't mean to like delivering success. I mean, like, think of he's been Home Secretary and Foreign Secretary. What's he done? What's he actually delivered that you could point to and say, he delivered that thing? There's nothing. So it's strange to me that someone with zero record of delivery in senior positions in government could be so well thought of by party members. But politics is a funny bunny. He'd hardly be the first proven failure to be respected by a party membership, would he? But there we are. Those are my thoughts. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe for further content and click the like button. You can also sign up for memberships if you'd like to support the channel further. Thanks for watching, and until next time, I'll see you later.